So we have a good friend of mine, Breanne Gibson, on to talk about a lot of exciting things. And I thought this was really important because Breanne is like my go-to person when it comes to gardening or anything to do with like connecting with earth, the soil, right? And now this time of year, also during this pandemic and what we're dealing with, it's that much more important to stay connected, not only to each other, but to the earth and to stay healthy, right? And that's a big part of being at home. You know, we, in terms of building a healthy home and what the conscious builders do, we also need to nourish ourselves and stay healthy ourselves, right? So there's indoor air quality, but there's also what we're putting into our body in other ways. And luckily, a lot of us can plant a garden, but some of us might not be able to plant a garden. So we're going to get into stuff like that. And we're going to be talking about resiliency within the home. And I know Breanne has a ton of tips, and she has lots of letters after her name that I don't know what they all mean. But she's a speaker, regenerative coach, nutrition, holistic nutrition expert, permaculture consultant. Breanne, thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk to you about, well, who knows where this conversation is going to
be. Yeah, so excited to be here, Casey. Thanks for having me.
So we originally met, I remember it was at Ecology Ottawa.
Yeah, the Eco Gap. Yeah, the Eco Gap.
We were like, I think we were going through like all of the items they have up on the silent auction, and then you had approached me, and then we just kind of connected from there, and then like I think I introduced you to Natasha, and then like you two are like best friends now. And yeah. I always know when I see Natasha roll into the driveway, not that we're going anywhere now, but when we could go out, she would roll into the driveway. She didn't come into the house right away. She'd be like 20, 30, 40 minutes. I'm like, yeah, she's probably talking to Breanne on the phone. So, anyways, all right. So let's talk about what's happening now, like with your background and nutrition. Like, what are you doing in your home for your life right now in order to, you know, take care of yourself? And, you know, maybe it's your mindset, but also your health.
Yeah, I must say, my life in and of itself hasn't changed all that much from kind of like my typical day to day. I do work from home, so that for me is not like a shift, which it is for many people who are out of the house through the day. So that hasn't been a change for me. I think right now, and similar but different, is just like the importance of structure during the day, because there is a lot of, you know, uncertainty is just amplified right now. We always live in the uncertain world, but there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so to create structure in the day, it gives momentum, it gives inspiration, it gives space to just like connect and tune into that structure that's really going to support you, support your health, support your mindset. So, you know, things like what you do when you first get up in the morning, really support yourself starting off the day, whether that's meditation, yoga. For me, it's yoga and meditation. If it's sunny outside, I go out on the deck and do it. And, you know, just really supporting myself in feeling good in all the different ways that can happen. So one other thing is before supper time, I am fortunate that I do have a backyard of woods. So like I go out for a walk every day. And that for me is super powerful. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but like I'm at my sister's right now. I'm actually not at my home. And so I'm helping my sister create a garden right now. So we're working on that in between work time. So
let's chat about that. Might as well chat about gardening, because I think that's something that, since a lot of us are at home, really two questions, you know, like for someone like your sister, someone like myself, where we have room, we can plant a garden, you know, what should we be doing? Obviously this is the time to do it. I don't know, actually here in Ottawa, it's still pretty cold, and I don't know where spring is, but either way, you know, when should we be doing it? How should we set it up? What are things we should be looking for? You know, even the right wood, if you're doing a box, but also, what about the people that are in apartments? You know, what can they do to do the same sort of thing, right? To grow their own food for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's can't really say like a specific response to that question because it's going to be dependent on each individual location, family, where you're situated, whether you're in an apartment, whether you're in urban or suburban, or even outside a city. So it will depend with like what that means for like the specific action steps that would be applicable and really valuable for you to take. But in terms of starting the garden, essentially you can start once the earth is unthawed. So if you live in a region where, you know, the ground freezes over the winter time, essentially once that starts to unthaw is a telling sign that, you know, you can really start growing food because the soil is becoming back, not frozen anymore, essentially, to get seeds in the ground and get things growing. And again, you know, whether you're living in an apartment or a home, whether you have a backyard or just like a balcony or a porch or a sunny windowsill that's facing south in your apartment, you know, you can do a variety of things depending on the space that you have. And so to not necessarily think like, oh, I don't have this space, I can't grow any food, but to be open to, you know, not having a specific way of what a garden has to look like, and really just getting creative of like, okay, I have some space, I have some sun that comes through, whether that is a windowsill or on a balcony or porch or deck, or if you have a front yard or a backyard, whatever it may be. But to open yourself up to like what's possible, and not to feel that it has to be something big to just get started, like solely, you know, getting one plant going or a few of your favorite herbs is a great place to start if you're just starting out. So
what
yeah.
what would you recommend for like myself? So family of 3, we do have some room, right?
Yeah.
Could we, you know, just set up a 4x8 garden, you know, box sort of thing outside and pick up some organic soil? Is that important? I'm assuming yes, but
Yeah, so yes to all of those questions, but it really comes down to like your personal desires. So there's no sense in putting in something that's beyond, you know, what you guys are interested in, and it's always best to start small because you can always grow out from there. So in permaculture, we always think right outside the doorstep, you know, really close. And think about, okay, what are the things that we love to eat as a family that we use a lot in the dishes and the meals that we eat, and would be really fun to grow ourselves and have that nutrient dense food right at our doorstep, so we don't have to be going out to the grocery store to get those foods. So that's a good thing to think about from the, you know, just simply asking the question, like, what is the herb that I eat the most of, or what is the vegetable or the leafy green that I love? And if it grows in your specific climate region, then it's a great place to start. So with a family of 3 and you have a backyard, you know, yeah, you have space, but I would, you know, really key in on, okay, like what time and what energy to put into it first, because it will require time and
I have no time and no energy.
no time and energy. So the thing at the beginning is that yes, it's going to require some physical labor unless you hired it out, but over time, when you design a system and build it in such a way and everything becomes more established down the road, it's, you know, you're really, you know, from my point of view, is we're always trying to mimic what nature does herself. So if you're doing that in your garden system over time, as things become established, it will need less and less, you know, maintenance or even watering, because the plants are going to water themselves because you've created a system that's going to support that. Not necessarily like 100%, but majority.
Yeah. You know? Does that mean like as plants grow in that soil becomes better for the plants ultimately? Like it becomes more resilient? Is that the resiliency that we were talking about earlier?
It's part of it. Part of it will be like that synergy between the plant and the soil and how they support each other. The plant through its root systems, especially if it's a perennial plant that's in the ground year after year, its root systems are there, and that's essentially, you know, what feeds essentially, if we want to go into the details of kind of how a plant eats, it
Let's hear
shoots
it.
it shoots
I didn't
out.
even know that plants eat. So
So, so when a plant is in soil, and this would be not just dirt. So if we think about what's largely happened on the conventional agricultural front with food growing, is most of the soil life has been destroyed in that system because a lot of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and disruption of tilling and just pretty much destroying the ability for the life of the soil. Like I'm talking microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, like earthworms. All this life and juiciness that's part of healthy living soil has been vanished, depleted, destroyed, degraded. But in a healthy soil system, when the microorganisms are present, is the plant will shoot out of its roots what's called exudates. And these are like, you can think of them like sugars. And the microorganisms come and they take in those sugars, they start to digest them and release enzymes. And through that process, they're essentially going to be seeking out the nutrients the plant is demanding for from the sand, the silt, the clay, so the particles of the soil itself, because that's where all the nutrients are. But they are not available when it's dirt. So it's the nutrients are there, but there's no life to actually access the nutrients. And so when the soil life is present, it can actually go receive, get the nutrient from the sand, silt, or clay, and then give it back to the plant, because the plant requires the 17, 18, 19 nutrients that we require. Whereas in conventional agriculture, it's largely nitrogen, fertilizers that's being put on. So that's like, you think about like one nutrient within that plant versus the variety of nutrients.
so is that like eating burgers and fries every day and not really doing anything else?
Well, well, kind of, but not, I don't know if it's such a blank statement of yes and no, but.
So what does that do to the food then? So if I'm not growing it and I go to the supermarket and I buy organic food, what does that mean? Does that mean that soil was more nutrient dense, or does that just mean that they didn't add all of the other chemicals to it? Because I think it takes a while for a company to be able to get that certification, because you need to avoid using certain pesticides and chemicals for a certain length of time. I believe I could be wrong on that, but please correct me if I'm wrong. But does that mean like if we're getting food from that source, is it not giving us what we think it's giving us?
I would say largely, possibly yes. There's quite a range in the organic world, even within the certification. So it's really knowing like the farm that organic food is coming from. Because you take, for example, like a California monoculture kale organic farm, it's just kale, and it can be growing in very, not healthy soil, but they're not applying any synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. They may be applying like organic fertilizers and pesticides, versus like an organic farm, which is also certified, which is more biodiverse. There's many different varieties growing there. The soil health is lush and, a beautiful color. There might even be animals incorporated into the system. So that nutrients of that plant is having more accessibility to a biodiverse nutrients from the soil life, simply because of how the system is so diverse itself versus that monocultural organic kale farm. So like I always say, like it comes down to actually knowing where it's coming from. Organic is like a phenomenal starting point, but then as you go into that world, it's really getting to know like, okay, where is it actually coming from? If you really want to know like the potential nutrient density of that food. But of course, with organic, you're not getting exposed to the, GMOs and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. And that's largely, why organic is such a,
So it's still the better option, right? But
definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's really interesting. For those who are listening, obviously you can understand now why I go to Breanne for these questions, because she knows what she's talking about. That's for sure. So now, so back to my home garden. So I planned my garden. things are going great year after year. I assume based on what you're saying, it'll actually get easier and better as the soil gets more and more nutrient dense. Do I need to be moving things around within that garden, or does it not matter because it's such a small space?
Yeah, so essentially, like I like to always say, like you're growing soil, and the plants, the food that comes from your garden is actually like a result of you actually focusing your love and attention on the quality and the health of the soil. So if you focus when you're growing a garden on how do I feed the life in the soil, how do I protect the soil, how do I continue to, maintain, help it to restore water, maintain moisture, like just really thinking more about like your growing and building soil life before plant life. It's a great way to think about it. And then in terms of like rotating crops, as I think what you were kind of asking about is like changing position. So yes.
You say it a lot nicer than I do.
Yes. Like, if it's just like one bed, it's not a huge space to like change location of things. But the main reason why rotational, it's not so much that like it's depleted the nutrient density or the nutrient in that soil and now you have to plant it somewhere else so it can still get nutrients. That's not what it's about. If it's in a healthy soil system, it's more about pests. If you grow things year after year after year in the same location, especially like the brassica family and garlic and onions and things like this, it can kind of attract, it's more susceptible to pests simply because of being in that specific location over time. So that's the benefit of moving it around, so you actually minimize its susceptibility.
That makes sense. So when you're talking about building resiliency within and at the home, what exactly are you talking about then? I know for myself, we eat healthy and I feel better when I eat healthy. Is that what you mean by resiliency, or are you going beyond that?
Yeah, that it's part of that. It's much more than that. As much as that is a lot, simply eating high quality food, connecting to your food, growing some of your own food, all of that is supporting your resiliency within and at home. But resiliency, a lot of it comes down to the ways of thinking, the ways you see the world, the ways you feel the world, the ways you connect with the world, and largely how you connect with nature. So like, I believe we need to begin to truly harmonize with nature to thrive, instead of like fighting or working against nature, because nature, that's life itself, and we're a part of that. But what's has been happening and continues to happen, even what's happening right now, is there's like a distancing from the living world. If you just think of like the hygiene that has gone off the charts, even more so with what's unfolding, is it's a separation from life. And we actually want to be creating environments that allow life to thrive. We want that diversity. We want that exposure for our microbiome health. And so that's a piece of it, just like from the mind to the body to the connection with nature to the connection with your nature within. These are all pieces and parts of this greater whole of resiliency.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up. Like I've never seen this many people walking in my neighborhood before, which is good, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily more connected to nature. Sure, maybe they're outside and actually walking as a family, and maybe that family has become more connected, which is great. One of the reasons I wanted you on here is to talk about that connection with nature, right? I think nature is getting a huge break right now. That if you want to look at one of the good things that's happening right now is the fact that we aren't traveling as much. Yes, there's a lot of not so nice things happening to a lot of people, and my heart goes out to them. At the same time, Mother Nature is getting a huge break because we have not been very nice to her. And there's a lot of good that can come from this as well. So, getting out and doing a garden and getting your hands dirty and not worrying about having to wash them, that's a good point, right? To not get rid of bacteria is a bad word to a lot of people, but the way you're describing it, it's not bad, right? There is good bacteria, and we actually need bacteria in our lives, right? To stay healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are 10 times more bacteria cells than human cells. We're 100 times more the microbiome gene than like human gene. So if you put that in context, it's like you are walking around as a living microorganism. And if you're depleting yourself and removing yourself and separating yourself from that microbial life, you're actually depleting and increasing your susceptibility to dis-ease, to not feeling good, to feeling the feelings of isolation and separation even more deeper within yourself. And so it shows up in different ways for different people, but it is to recognize that we are part of this living system, and your individual living system is to be able to thrive as we continue. Like right now, with everything happening on the global scale, like this, it's a huge opportunity. It's a powerful and beautiful opportunity right now for more human beings to connect with the very life and nature herself. There's immense power in that, for moving forward. If we talk about food system to other systems, health system, the root, I believe, is in the disconnect from nature.
So that food system that you're talking about, there's centralized and you mentioned like a decentralized food system when we were talking earlier, I think before we hit record. What's the difference? What's a centralized food system versus a decentralized food system? And why do we need to know the difference? Why is it important?
It comes back down to, well, it comes back to resiliency in one sense. Like you think of the individuals that have, I mean, it's maybe not the best example in terms of food, but you go into a grocery store and you see like there's no longer access to something that you want. Largely because our food system is currently on a large scale a centralized food system, meaning food is largely coming from big pharma. So conventional agriculture, big corporations that own conventional agricultural farms, and they're also the owners of big pharma pesticides. So they're dipped into two hats. And when we can see that, we can also see why the food system and the dis-ease in human health is diminished with the effects of that system. So that's from one angle, but the centralization of it makes it very vulnerable. It's also in the hands of a small few. It's controlled. There's a fight against nature. It's like we're going to control nature for production, for yield, for all of this. Decentralized food system is the beauty of, growing more food in our backyards. Like you think about the end of World War II, and there was many victory gardens growing. So you bring food back down to the local level. Not to say that every family is to grow food, but to connect with your local community, your town, your city, who are the regenerative farmers in your area, to source your food from them. It's going to bring more sustainability and power and connection to, our livelihoods, and also not only that, but be eating much healthier food as a result, because it's not in huge monocultural, pesticide laden, GMO production, type crops.
Right. And then that actually gives you some sort of security as well. Cause like you said, like you go to the store and you can't find what you're looking for. If you can grow it, you have the ability, then you're not going to necessarily run out or have to rely on that food system, which also has to have shipping and the stores open and all sorts of things that need to happen for that food. I remember talking to Sullivan, our little guy, about this, right? Like if you think of the amount of energy that it takes for all the food that's on your plate to get to your plate, if we're not putting that same amount of energy back into the earth, like it's going to run out eventually. It's just not a sustainable environment, right?
Exactly.
So if you're feeding an animal all of this food, you have to grow the food, you have to feed the animal, you have to then slaughter the animal. The animal has to be shipped, and there's all sorts of energy and then shipping costs and all sorts of stuff. And then you need to go to the store and pick it up, and you need to get there somehow and then bring it home. And then you need to use energy to prepare it. It's just not going to last, right? So I always said, like, the earth has been here, here way before us, is going to be here way after us. If it's not happy with us, it's just going to eject us and continue on, right? 100 years at most that we're here, 60, 70, whatever, 78, whatever the average is for most people is like a fraction. It doesn't even matter, right? So when you put it into that context, you're like, okay, yeah. Now all of a sudden I'm talking myself into putting the time and energy into putting that garden in the backyard.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like you're putting energy into your life because we live, I mean, yes, we can survive quite a number of days just on water, but we live, we thrive because we have the ability to be nourished by the earth through the food she grows. And so you made like an incredible point of like, we always, with your son of just giving back, like whatever you take, you should always give back like double time, because we need to be continue to nourish like the foundation of our foundation of that allows us to be here and thrive.
And that would be like the word that I have trouble saying, regenerative. So that's like the regenerative approach. Anyways,
regeneration.
I'll get it down.
Yeah, and that going back to that question about organic is, and this is not broad scope like all organic farms because there is quite a range, but in a lot of ways it's like do no harm in the organic thinking, but a regenerative organic thinking is actually you're improving the system. So it's not only like not destroying or degrading the system, you're actually, helping it to be even that much more nutrient dense, beautiful, and biodiverse.
All right, so we got a question actually from my little sis. I shouldn't say little; she's taller than me probably. But anyways, from my sis, she says, "What is the most healthy way to keep animals and pests away without harming the animals?" And also, have you seen the documentary "The Biggest Little Farm" on Netflix? If so, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah,
Thank you, Trish,
I love that documentary. I actually saw it in theater because I was like, I knew it was going to be right up my alley, but it's a great example of an integrative regenerative system. And transforming a very, very dry, degraded California landscape into abundance and biodiversity. And also that documentary really demonstrates that, over time as they learn, like there's a much greater system at work and you're only playing a part in it. So, when you grow a garden, you're not actually the one growing. You're like a part of it, but what's actually doing the growing is the life that's a part of that process. So yeah, that documentary is really beautiful. In terms of not harming animals and pests, I mean, what's coming to mind is, I think this is what the question's asking, but essentially, if you have space like a backyard and there's deer or rabbits or groundhogs or these types of animals, essentially you have to put a fence up. Or you have to have a dog that's kind of like, gonna run after the wildlife if they're gonna be coming into the garden. So, but a deer fence, and with the rabbits in the groundhole actually digging down, a couple feet into the earth so that there's that barrier, because some of those animals like to dig, tunnels.
So Bugs Bunny was actually true. You can actually go underneath the garden. And
well, I was speaking more to like the groundhogs, but yeah. So that for those animals, that would be it. I mean, birds, that's going to be, if you're growing berries, it's going to be putting nets around, when the berries are in production, if you don't want the birds to be taking all the berries. I always like to say like grow enough so that if, wildlife comes along, you have enough for you, and, it's not just, keep everyone out. But if you truly want to keep everyone out and have all of the abundance that's growing, then yeah, you definitely have to put up a fence.
We just watched a movie. It's hilarious. Peter Rabbit on Netflix. I think if you want to watch a funny movie, it's actually hilarious for adults too, but it kind of reminds me of that, because the whole premise of the movie is like Peter Rabbit trying to get the garden from the humans. Right. And anyways, it's a hilarious movie, but side note, Peter Rabbit's good, but also watch the Biggest Little Farm.
Yeah.
So do you think that it's going to be important to grow our own food, just not necessarily from so outside of health, but just from a world approach, right? Do we need to be working towards that decentralized food system? Like, are we going to have shortages? Or are we going, in your opinion, are we basically going to get to a point where we can't do it anymore? We have to change.
Well, I mean, the earth is telling in big ways that change is being asked. So I think from an earth perspective, if you're tuning into what nature is sharing with us and the intelligence, that she's sharing, when you can tune into that, you can see that continuing on, even for our own ability to be here, is we need to change a way of how we're nourishing ourselves, from a food perspective, and moving away from the small handful of foods that are largely in a lot of food products, and coming back to growing some of our own. And like I said, it's not necessarily like every family is going to grow their own food. That's not necessarily where people are to be dispensing their energy. It's going to be very dependent on what's important and what's really in you for where you want to concentrate your energy. But it's the future. It's for community, connection, nourishment, working with the intelligence of nature herself, with life, with all living sentient beings. Like I see this as, the way forward in many ways.
So I have a couple more questions of my own as well. Composting. We have, like, here in Ottawa, I know you're on the other side of Canada right now. I don't know what they have in BC, but here in Ottawa, we have the green boxes, right? You were living here before. Is that good? Like, obviously it's better than throwing it in the garbage, but should I have my own compost bin in my backyard if I have the ability to do that? Or is just putting everything in the green bin just as good?
It depends what your desire is. So if you're not growing food or your neighbors aren't growing food and you want to, make some compost for them, it makes sense to then put it in the green bin and give it to the city to actually compost for you, and actually know that those food scraps are going into purpose and not going into landfill. But if you are growing a garden or you have a neighborhood and, it's like, it's easy to compost in the back and then hand it off. If you do have neighbors, if you're not growing your own, then I'd highly recommend to keep that resource on your land, on your location, because that is, we think when we harvest food, we're taking nutrients that has been given from the earth so we can give nutrients to our body. So when we put food scraps back into and compost that, and then be able to add that back to the soil, which is essentially the most nutrient dense medium that we can be helping to build soil health, is we're returning those nutrients, back to the life in the soil and continuing to improve and build the system.
So why is it important to compost as opposed to throwing it into the landfill?
Well, it comes down to the off-gassing of methane primarily. So you think of food waste in garbage bags sitting in landfills, and through that unnatural decomposition process, it's releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and actually we're wasting like prime resource. So that's essentially, we're throwing nutrients out the door and actually depleting like our Earth's atmosphere as a result.
Right. So it's kind of like a double whammy. So not only are you taking advantage of what you could be doing, you're actually doing harm by doing it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, we won't go into human manure, but like, even if you think of like like our waste, you think of all animal waste, like when we get composted mushrooms or composted horse manure or composted alpaca, this is waste from animals. We're animals, and we put all our waste into the oceans, out in sewage, like it's, it goes through systems before that, but like we're just like putting out a prime resource. And I remember when I was in Guatemala and I made my first like herb spout on this land community I was in with human manure, and it was like the most beautiful like compost. And it just goes to show that if we are tuning into resource and really wanting to build nutrients and actually be fueling ourselves and the life around us, like we don't want to be chucking things into a landfill, and we want to keeping resource that we have available to us where we are, so we can transform that, reuse it, repurpose it in ways that are going to be highly valuable.
Actually, funny that you bring up human manure. The last business conference I went to last year, I think, one of the guys that I met that I connected with there, he's a farmer, big time farmer. And one of the businesses he was about to start was for human manure.
Yeah. So, oh, it's a huge opportunity. Huge opportunity.
well, he's an entrepreneur at heart, right? So there's a huge opportunity here. So why don't I go make some money?
Yeah.
Connect with him, see how that's going. Anyways, well, what if the human's not eating organic food? But anyway, no, we won't get into it.
Yeah, I mean, but well, we'll keep it short. But like microorganisms have the ability to break down toxins. We can just kind of leave it at that. But yeah,
okay.
You think of nature provides ways to heal. So
yeah, very true. Okay, so I know. I'm just going through my notes here. I know that you are now feeding 2, so congratulations. It's public. Excited for you and your man. Are you doing anything different, or like, I know that you're already very conscious of everything that you do, but I know at the same time, at least when I went through this experience with Natasha, like things change, hormones change, you have different, your body seems to want different things. Is anything changed for you?
There's been periods, like in my first trimester, there was about 3 weeks where I just was like extremely tired and experienced a bit of nausea, and like just had to eat kind of, and it would subside the nausea. But that period of like extreme fatigue, actually, it's a gift to be able to grow life. And that extreme fatigue was an opportunity for me to just surrender to the fatigue. And I laid horizontal a lot of the time and just like tuned into, the process and what I was experiencing. Since those kind of weeks, then I have felt pretty normal in myself. Obviously my body's changing. And I do still experience like more fatigue through the day, or I'm not a nap taker, and some days I'll take a nap. So changes like that. I'm not running or doing like really heavy, like not doing lifting or different modes of movement that I used to do, simply because my body just doesn't feel like it. So still doing other, like walking and hiking a lot, yoga. Primarily is my movement right now, which we're a part of it, but I've kind of removed those more impacts, not because I necessarily can't in a way, it's just I just don't have a desire for it right now. On the food side of things, it's been, I had a few aversions in like the first trimester time to things that I really love, but then those came back after those few weeks. And I guess the one other change is I don't typically consume a protein powder, but simply just to support right in the morning hours to get like a good protein load in. I have been taking like my favorite protein powder, and my body's been really enjoying having that come in. I think those are like the main differences. So not so much, but a little bit.
So the other thing, like, since we're all at home, obviously we're not talking about building homes as a conscious builder, but I think this is all important, very important, right? And, I talk a lot about indoor air quality, and, a big reason why we do what we do is to make sure that, that you are supporting that healthy environment as well. And, I get a lot of questions around if your house is where houses need to breathe and all this. And I'm like, yeah, but, not the way you think typically, right? We want to control that air that's coming in and out with like lungs, essentially.
Right.
I don't want holes all over the place bringing in chemicals. And, but yeah, so let's talk about a couple of different things that people can do. Because now I notice you're wearing glasses, but they're not typical glasses to them. We're all spending way more time in front of screens, right? Because we're doing meetings like this. So what are the glasses you're wearing?
They're blue light blocking glasses, so they're minimizing my exposure to unnatural spectrums of light through the day. And And especially I have a different like red pear that I put on in the evening to support like melatonin being produced, even if I am still being exposed to light, so can support me moving into quality sleep. So essentially, in today's day and age, and especially now with like phones and computers and, these lights, is we're exposed to a lot of artificial light that in the past, if we think back to the human biology system, we weren't, it was like sun up, sun down, candlelight. So the more we can minimize our exposure to this artificial like junk blue light that we get exposed to a lot through these screen devices, and particular lights in our home, the better for, clarity, for energy, for sleep quality. And even like eye strain is a big one for people. And then tension headaches or migraines. These glasses, like I've heard beautiful stories of just, because the eye strain leaves and then the tension headaches leave, and they didn't realize the connection between screen time and how it was impacting their eyes and then other areas of their body.
What's the manufacturer, the glasses?
This is I love two manufacturers. These pair are actually Swannies or Swanwick. I also love True Dark. Those are the ones I wear in the evening, so those are two.
One of the things, I don't have the glasses. I know Natasha has a pair that I actually had gotten her for Christmas, but I use a software called Flux.
Yeah.
Which
That's
does
awesome
the same
too.
sort of thing too, right? So by the end of the night, when I'm trying to work through spreadsheets and I have color codings, like all the colors like look the same, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, for nighttime.
Go to bed.
Yeah.
Check out Flux too if you don't want to get the glasses. Flux, I'm pretty sure is free. I don't remember paying for it, but
yeah, it is. It is free. It's a free download. It's great for like in the evening, but it doesn't really speak to like exposure through the day, which can also have an impact.
But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. And I find it's better than like the night mode stuff that's built into. I'm a Apple guy, but it works a lot better than that.
Yeah.
So unless there's any more questions, Brian shooting questions. If anything comes up, we'll address those. But I have one last one. And other than the new life that's coming into your life, what are you most excited about in the future? What are you working on?
In the future.
I know you have some links. You have your Grow Your Nutrition Guide, which we will share with people. We'll make sure we post that up there. But what has Breanne excited?
Oh, yeah, there's lots actually. Well, yeah, I am excited. Actually, you mentioned the guide. So I have a Grow Your Nutrition course. It's largely for conscious women and moms who want to grow their own food, working in harmony with nature. So it's a great course where I teach you, from step one to step whatever to get your garden started. And there's also a beautiful community that's forming around that with lots of questions and ability to receive feedback and guidance and the like. So that's really beautiful to see the community growing, especially at a time like this, when I believe it's just a phenomenal way to spend time with your children, get connected to the earth, connect more with your food, understand how to work in harmony with nature as you do so. I'm also excited because I'm helping my sister here grow a garden. So that's fun. She hasn't had a garden before. And so to be able to be here and help her put that together and learn is really exciting. And of course, there's lots, from the coaching angle and moving likely back to Canada come this summer.
Back to Ottawa, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, if all pans out well. And just, this opportunity to be here, living and, be living during a time of such opportunity. These next years, 5, 10 more years there's huge opportunity for how, our human being type life will change and has the opportunity to transform. And it's a really phenomenal time to be alive. And I'm really grateful for that and excited to see the ability to rise in consciousness and to expand human evolution and potential.
I love it. You are definitely on a mission. For good. And actually, one more question popped into mind that doesn't have anything to do with you just said. It just popped into mind because
Okay.
I was looking back to our conversation last year and looking out my window here and looking at all the leaves. And I did not rake my leaves because last year I raked my leaves and you were like, I hope you didn't throw them away. And I'm like, no, I didn't throw them away. So people should not rake their leaves and throw them in the bags and put them at the end of the road is what you're saying, right? And why?
Yeah, I'm essentially saying that because if you live in a property where you're raking leaves, like those leaves are a resource. So you start like to be able to start thinking of everything as a potential resource and what is that resource that nature is giving for herself. And if you are going to rake it up and take that from there, because now grass is growing, which is, the third largest crop grown, and we don't need to go there, but you take those leaves from that tree, that those leaves had a purpose, that they fell from that tree. And in a forest system, if you think the floor is always covered, she's always protecting her ground, returning nutrients back for the next spring to blossom and to produce. And so if you're going to rake up those leaves, if they're going to like a composting system, but you really got to check into these types of things of like, is it going there? Is it going to landfill? Where is it going? But I would keep that resource and actually compost it yourself, or use it as a mulch, or use it in some way, shape, or form, especially if you're going to be growing a garden.
Yeah. So, well, like I said, I think I feel like I talked myself into growing a garden when I was talking about the energy. So I'll make sure to do that.
Yes.
So for everyone that's watching or going to be watching after, check out, we'll be sure that we'll post a link to your guide. But also you can follow, you can go to breannegibson.com and you have Circular Nutrition is your Instagram.
Yeah.
As well. Well, Facebook, you have obviously your name, but also Circular Nutrition on Facebook as well. And people can find you on LinkedIn. Anything else you want to share with our listeners and viewers?
Just to really provide yourself opportunity to create environments to allow yourself to expand, even right now where you may feel that, it's limited because you're in the house, but to allow some space, visioning to really, okay, like what steps can I do to expand my potential in ways that I can create different things in my environment, or get creative, essentially. So not to take this time as like a diminishing time, but actually as like an opportunity for growth and expansion. In all the different ways that we've kind of talked about today, and even beyond what we were able to talk about.
That's so great, Breanne. I love that. Just had a team meeting actually this afternoon, and we were talking about just that, right? We're not taking this time to pull back on anything. We're focusing on growth even within the business, right? So we want to be focusing on these opportunities to do things that we typically wouldn't have time to do, because we'd be so busy with other stuff, right? And that's the same for in a house, the family, outside, right? So love that. Great message.
Awesome.
Maybe that should be the new title once we close this. Growth and expansion. So thank you so much, Breanne. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Casey.